That's fair. You all ready to roll?
Yes, I have a cup of tea and I'm eating Christmas cake. So,
You have a cup of tea and eating Christmas cake. Shameful.
Christmas cake.
Shame.
Christmas cake.
Yay. We'll kick it off. Welcome to Yelling at Concrete Podcast, Martyn.
Whoa.
With a mouthful of Christmas
Fourth year
cake.
in a row?
Is it fourth year in a row?
Yeah, there was one that was us and two with Ollie.
One of us, two Ollie, and then this one. No Ollie this year. No Ollie. Hiding away. Because of pandemic situations and everything like that. We're kicking off the year right, though. I mean, I've managed to stack some podcasts post this podcast, and all of them are Zoom conversations because obviously I can't meet anyone. So
Well,
we're
makes
kicking
sense,
off
doesn't
the year right. Yeah. I mean, obviously we saw each other over Christmas.
And why are we doing it via Zoom and not in person, Graham?
We're doing it because I forgot the camera. That's why. And the microphones and everything. But it was one of many things I forgot that weekend, including I believe I've left my gloves at my parents' house. I also left my phone charger at our parents' house.
You left your iPad charger, yeah.
Yeah.
Text me about.
And yeah, it was just a weekend of forgetful things. Did not balance that out.
But, these things happen. So.
Yeah.
So
but no, I like to start the year off. Yeah.
Well, I guess we get to do a different setup and a different look for the thing anyway, which is good. It means I can test my microphone out.
Does.
And then, yeah, I can also slightly filter myself on video so I look slightly younger than I am. So that's a bonus.
I mean, out of the two of us, who looks youngest here?
Right. Well, I do because I haven't got a stupid Jesus beard, but...
It's hardly stupid if Jesus had it, Christ.
I mean, I can see a grey patch in the centre of your beard.
That's not grey, that's just light. It's highlight.
I know, my beard has different patches of colour. It does. It always has done. It's had three colours all its life. It could be brown, could be ginger, could be blonde.
That is the one thing with mine. Like, my hair and my beard are at least the same colour. Like, basically the same colour anyway.
My beard is more ginger than I want it to be.
But you were blonde.
Say what?
You were blonde for like the longest time, like properly blonde.
Oh, as a kid, my hair, yeah, 100%. I was like super blonde.
Yeah.
Like if you see that the picture in the dining room, which Mum's got up of me, I think it's like 4 years old.
Yeah.
My hair looks like proper like ash blonde.
Yeah.
Just almost white. And then it wasn't until I was kind of like maybe 14, 15 that the blonde started to drift away and my hair became more brown. And now it's just basically brown.
Yeah, you got quite dark hair now these days.
It's got a lot darker over the years, yeah.
Which is a shame because you could have gone white haired and now you'll probably go like grey.
Mm-hmm. Which is annoying. I am tempted to dye my hair.
What colour though?
Just like do one of those like really bad bleach blonde dye jobs. Like a Justin Bieber kind of like, you can definitely see the roots because he doesn't give a shit. Just because I think it'll be funny.
Well, just get like a synth keyboard and join an electronica band and start working out.
Yeah. One of those things is more likely to happen than the other, but
I mean,
yeah. All
what
good.
do you do? Yeah. I mean, I think this is why I like to start the year off with us, essentially, because this podcast episode differs so much from all the other podcast episodes because obviously we've known each other for so long, at least 31 years. So the way we converse is completely different to how I converse with every other guest. The way we discuss things is completely different. It's just a nice kickoff.
Well, it's like when you interview anyone that you're only meeting for the first time. So like you have a few guests on which like you never really met them, you kind of know them via Instagram or through a friend. Like that conversation will obviously have a different cadence and like tone to anything else. Like you had Brett and Charlotte on, for example, or you had like Mel or like those kind of people who you see in real life all the time quite regularly. Then that's different again to how it would be again with me because because we're brothers, it's like there's a much more relaxed tone to it. Like most people, again, will probably be a bit more respectful on the podcast as well. Whereas, like, I'll just talk like I normally would. I wouldn't change the way I am for the podcast. And if I think you've been a dickhead, I'll call you a dickhead. Whereas other people will be like, oh, well, it's Graham's podcast, I best not call him a dickhead. Like, even Brett and Charlotte would probably stand on ceremony a little bit.
I get that nice little protection from dickhead. I mean, obviously, you are my older brother as well, so there is a level of that, which gets worked into things. But no, yeah, I got thinking about it the other day, just kind of how we approach things and things we've discussed in the past. I mean, what did we start? We started off with partisanism. We discussed last year. We just did like a best of or worst of 2019, which now seems very light compared to 2020. And
what are you on about? Nothing's happening in 2020.
Nothing's happening in 2020. It's just a quiet year.
Not been a depressing year at all.
No, we don't get depressed.
I was watching just before I came on, I was watching a Vice, kind of like things you missed from this year.
Right.
Kind of thing that you forget that like happened, and kind of like minimal moments that you were just like, oh, okay, yeah, cool. Yeah. I forgot that was a thing. SpongeBob being gay, like completely forgot that was a thing.
I never even heard that.
Oh yeah, SpongeBob.
When was that thing?
Well, I'm not gonna say gay.
Okay.
Because the bit I read on it, it was LGBT, like alliance. So I wouldn't specifically say he's gay. He could be bi. I don't really know. Okay. I didn't delve that far deep into it. But that was announced by Nickelodeon this year. Apparently, there's been a fan theory for a long time.
I mean, I always assumed SpongeBob was asexual. Because from the episodes I've seen, he's never had a romantic interest in anybody other than maybe Gary. So
Gary is pretty fit, to be fair.
I mean, yeah.
I just not often I think about the preferences of a sponge. So yeah.
There we have the title of this year's podcast: Sexual Preferences of a Sponge.
There was the whole total landscaping thing with Rudy Giuliani, which I completely forgot was a thing, and now I remember it. I still think it's the most hilarious thing in probably the history of the world.
Giuliani is he's a goddamn caricature in himself. Like, I do not understand him. Like, he's one of those people who you see, and he makes Trump seem balanced. Like, you look at them both, and you're like, oh yeah, no one's like that, and then you meet someone else, and you're like, oh crap, there's like 50 more of you.
Yeah, right now, because Trump still has a responsibility in some way, shape, or form, and there's still a few people in front of him stopping him doing the things he wants to do.
Yeah.
Whereas Giuliani has less of a filter with that kind of thing. So
Giuliani's just like,
January,
I'm gonna do whatever I want.
Come January, an old diaper boy will he'll let rip, I'm sure.
Old diaper boy.
You're not seeing the stuff about him.
I've seen the stuff.
Most likely wears adult diapers all the time.
I mean, that's a serious issue, though, for a lot of older people. I feel like it's something we should pick on him about.
But for a person that picks on other people all the time,
definitely, yeah.
Including disabled people, including anyone of any race and creed that isn't straight white male, then, yeah, fuck that guy.
Yeah, I don't think he deserves any protection in any way, shape, or form. There's a real drop-off there. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of kind of, like, changing things throughout the year. I think the cartoon one's weird. Like, well, not weird in the sense of they can't come out, but that's much more apparent now. I feel like that happens every year. Like, we get some revelation about some character from one episode or one to the other, which is like, oh yeah, this is a thing now, and this is, rather than just sitting there, rather than just being an accepted thing, it's just like, oh no, this is a thing.
Oh, like these things happen. Like, I listened to the great podcast called Every Little Thing. I was going to make sure it was Every Little Thing. Yep, it was Every Little Thing. From Gimlet Media, and they just kind of like go through a small thing. They just go through a small thing. And the latest episode which I listened to on the walk with the dog this morning was How Old is Winnie the Pooh?
Okay.
And trying to work out how old Winnie the Pooh is, because he talks like an old man.
He does.
He does calisthenics like an old man in the morning, has his routines, enjoys honey at certain times of the day. Like, he has a lot of old man preference. And this lady had written into the show saying, like, me and my family every year, at Christmas, we argue about how old Winnie the Pooh is. As half the camp thinks he's young, half the camp thinks he's old. Like, how old is Winnie the Pooh? And then the podcast goes through a couple of different things. They do a couple of stunty things, like, they call up a guy that works at a carnival that guesses people's ages as like a carnival trick.
Right.
Then they call up a bear expert and try and work out what kind of bear Winnie the Pooh actually is.
What kind of bear is it?
Which they conclude black bear.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I could see him being a black bear.
Well, he's effectively a teddy bear.
Yeah.
And teddy bear comes from Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah.
While he was hunting, not wanting to kill a bear.
Yeah.
Because he was really, like, enamored with this bear. And that bear was a black bear. And that bear became known as Teddy's bear, which then became teddy bears.
Which got hooked through.
So there's an assumption that it's a black bear. So then you go through the different things, like he's got a big belly, which is typically prevalent in older bears. But then he's got a small head, which is typically present in older bears as well. But then blah blah, and there's a whole thing. Eventually, they get to this. Excuse me.
You're just dying on stream now, right now.
Eventually, they call up this woman who had written an article for New York Times, which was like an in-depth look at the universe of Winnie the Pooh, because she was really enamored with it and obsessed with it. And the answer they came to is he is 4 years old.
4 years old. Because
in the very last book from Winnie the Pooh, Christopher Robin is talking about his life and what he's got ahead of him and how he's going to live to about 100. And then Pooh asks, how old will I be when you're 100? And he goes, 99. And then you look at what Christopher Robin is doing when he's abandoning his kind of like imaginary world. He said, look, I might not have the time for you anymore because I have stuff to do. I'm going to have responsibilities, which would indicate he's probably going to start school.
Yeah.
Which you typically do at about 5 years old.
Yeah.
So that would make Pooh 4. So then that answers the question of how old is Winnie the Pooh?
He's been 4 years old. I feel like that.
I also enjoy random revelations like that from childhood.
It's just one of those things like nowadays. I feel like we have too much time to consider these things. It's like this whole Simpsons thing, like whether every single time they're like, like Simpsons predictions. I'm like, okay, well, Simpsons has ran for literally forever, so you could pick out anything from any point and relate it to any point in time and be like, yeah, that's a revelation from Simpsons. The same way of like, it's like the Nostradamus book. You basically go back and fit things to things, but when these things came out and when we were kids, we didn't have time to do that because you barely even got to see media back then.
Well, yeah, because unless you bought it,
yeah,
you couldn't repeat it.
But then I wouldn't even know how to buy it back then. I never really remember seeing VHSs for The Simpsons.
There wasn't that many. Because obviously you want the full season.
Yeah.
You can't fit that on a VHS. So, much like...
we had Friends over like 5 VHSs, didn't we?
So that's what I was going to say. So you remember Friends VHSs, it'd be like 5 or 6 VHSs per season, about 4 episodes per tape. The Simpsons didn't do that. They just, like, especially from my memory, what they always did was like, here's a Halloween special VHS, and here's 4 selected Halloween episodes. Here's Bart the Bad Boy VHS, and it's got 4 Bart-centric episodes of him doing stupid stuff. And like, they did that instead. And I don't remember until, as far as I can say, I don't remember seeing it until they got to DVDs where they started releasing full seasons. But there's a lot of stuff like that. Like, if you decided back then that, I really wanted to watch all of Button Moon, like, do you think that would have been out on VHS as a full collection? Probably not.
No, this is the thing. Like, it just kind of came and went. I feel like this is the hardest thing to explain to anyone under the age of 20. That content didn't used to last forever, and it wasn't just everywhere. I think that's, but at the same time, as someone who's in his 30s, I'm very frustrated when I can't find something now, which I think I should be able to find.
Like, I'm good at internet research. Like, I'm one of those people that can really dig to find the thing that you want to find. A friend of mine the other day really wanted to watch Third Rock from the Sun.
Oh yeah.
couldn't find it on a streaming
Fantastic
service
show.
anywhere. Not on Netflix, not on Amazon Prime, it's not on All 4, not on BBC iPlayer, not on ITV Player. It's like it's not on any of those platforms.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking legal platforms within the UK. Yeah. It's not on any of those like weird ones like Voodoo or like how's that other one?
Hulu. Hulu.
Well, Hulu's American, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know.
There's VEDU, I think, is one of them. I can't remember. There's loads of them.
Yeah.
There's one with a really bad name, which I kind of like Wuwaki TV or something like that.
Wuwaki TV.
Something like that. I can't remember. But she like couldn't find it anywhere. She's like, look, it's not streaming. I can't find it. And I managed to find a Dailymotion account. After a bit of digging, I found a Dailymotion account which has the first 4 seasons complete uploaded to it as like a collection. And whoever owns this Dailymotion account clearly loves a selection of 90s shows like there's Boy Meets World complete on there. And it's a couple of different things. And like, passed that to her and she was like, oh, fucking brilliant. Like, it's Chromecast compatible because it's on Dailymotion, not a weird dodgy site. And like, it does frustrate me when I can't find things because like I like to think that I'm quite good at it, and especially on a surface level for like general stuff.
Yeah, especially bigger stuff as well, like that. Like, Third Rock Junction wasn't a small show in any capacity. There's like 6 seasons or something like that.
I would say so, and some quite famous people in it. And
it's like a big old show. But then it's just whoever happens to own the rights. Like, I mean, we had this conversation over Christmas because you were watching Seinfeld. Yeah, you were watching Seinfeld, and you were watching it on Netflix.
No, I was watching it on All 4.
You were watching it on All 4.
All the adverts.
Yeah, and I was like, no, it's just on Prime. And then you ruined your day because you'd been watching all the adverts.
Well, what I really want, like, I wish someone would make a really good, cohesive app or website, which you could just put in. And this should come from someone like IMDb, or it should come from someone like Rotten Tomatoes, someone that has a database system. Yeah. Because if you go on Rotten Tomatoes now and you click where is it streaming, it's only American sites that it lists. Yeah. Only American sites. If you go on IMDb, it's usually American sites, but then most of the time it will tell you it's streaming, but it's actually purchasing it from the Google Play Store or iTunes.
Yep.
And I really wish someone would make a site where I can just go on and I can be like, Seinfeld, where are you? Well, I'm in the UK. These are the legal places that you can stream this show within the UK. If you can't stream it, it will say no streaming available. Purchase options below, list out the purchase options and the price. It only really takes Apple, Amazon, Google to kind of like just feed their data into it through like an API or something.
They won't do that though. That's just.
It's beneficial though. Like, I think it's beneficial. Apple have tried to do it.
This is what consumers want. This is what like the whole thing with like cross-platform play has been. Like the whole argument. It's like what consumers want, what would be most useful to everybody. But companies just don't play ball with it. Like,
but
they just don't, because they're all just like, oh no, we just want to dominate the IP market, and you're like, but you don't own the rights to have this.
When all this like new stuff comes along, and like IP market is different. Like Disney Plus is available everywhere, so it's kind of like, okay, look, I can deal with that because it's a Disney thing now. And like Netflix shows are Netflix shows, but it's available worldwide because they own the IP. It's when it gets third-party deals that screws everyone over.
Yeah.
But like, all this like play nice stuff, it all comes eventually.
Yeah.
It all does come eventually. And like, you think about like washing machines or dishwashers and things like that, they all have to be intercompatible with everything in the world. If you made a dishwasher from Russell Hobbs that only worked with Russell Hobbs branded plates or, blah, 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 no one would buy it.
Yeah. Like, well, that was the whole thing with like mobile phones, wasn't it?
Yeah, like the USB connectors and stuff like that.
They basically introduced a law which said you couldn't have individual connectors. You had to use like a universal connector.
This is it. Like Sony was a bugger for that back in the day. Of like one of my old Sony phones, like M200, I think it was, and the Nokia N95. Like both of them had proprietary connectors which just weren't compatible with anything else.
The Sony one was like a SCART lead. You had to shove in at
like
one
a weird
point.
2-prong kind of thing. Yeah, and then like I remember my first, I say first, but like one of my main CyberShot cameras, little handheld point and click kind of thing. That was a Sony, and Sony back in the day had their own SD cards.
Yeah.
So they didn't use SD cards. Everyone else used SD cards. They didn't use SD cards. They used the Sony M2 card, and they were like 5 times the price of an SD card. I didn't realize this when I bought it, and I was on it afterwards. Where I was like, oh, love of God. And that carried over to the PSP. They use the same things. Like when they launched the PSP, they were just like, oh, we'll use these M2 cards because fuck you, that's why.
Yeah,
and it's just like, eventually that goes away. Eventually it all drifts away. Like the next big one now is like Tesla supercharger stations. Any other electric car doesn't work with Tesla supercharger stations.
Yeah.
So you can only charge your Tesla at a supercharger station. These other companies are not investing in the same worldwide network. Tesla, they say they're open to other people using it, but I don't really. I would assume they will be, but I don't think they've worked out the actual caveat of like how that works or who pays for what. I don't really know.
I don't think they will.
But eventually, if electric cars is the way that we're moving, which I think it is,
seems to be.
like, then you will need a large network of chargers, and you can't have the Toyota station, the Tesla station, the Porsche station. You have to have a petrol station.
Yeah. You have to have a fuel station
that
you can go to, anyone can go to, and hook up to.
So things like international streaming rights, things like not being able to find things on platforms, all this like obfuscated stuff. But most of the time, it just takes one person to come along and go, no, fuck you, I'm doing it this way.
Yeah.
And it's like online streaming and stuff like that, buying songs legally. You know, iTunes came along and was like, sup. Yeah. But usually it obviously there's people that do it beforehand and there's people that might do it better, but it's the money. So you just need a money man to
need a cheeky money man. I'm always surprised if Bezos doesn't throw his name into it.
He will, don't worry.
Amazon fuel stations. Can easily see that being a thing. Right.
I can, yeah. I'm sure they'll release an electric car at some point soon. So.
It's one of those annoying things in this. Like, I mean, like, so like Batman the animated series is probably one which still frustrates me to this day. So you've got Batman animated series. There's 3 box sets for it. I can only get 2 box sets for it, which are suitable for my region. They've never released the 3rd box set in our country, and just never released it. And it's one of those things where, like, I think it's quite a hard thing to comprehend nowadays, because it's just like, yeah, everything's everywhere. But then it's the same with like the amount of times we've discussed shows where we've been like, hey, do you remember this show? And me and you remember it, and nobody else remembers it. And you're like, yeah, but how do I access that?
Those things are mostly regional, aren't they? Or kind of just one of those things where you get surprised by like some of the things that people
remember
have and haven't seen.
One came up the other day. Like, what was it? I think it was on Reddit, and someone had posted about Roly Poly Oly.
Oh yeah.
Which is like, I remember watching on Channel 5 in like a morning whilst I was in college, because, you know, watch TV shows much too late. And the amount of people who'd never even heard of it, I'm like, no, that was like a thing every day on Channel 5. It's like Bear in the Big Blue's house.
Yeah, like people don't like, but then again, like I was watching Bear in the Big Blue House in the morning when I was probably like 14, 15, not because I enjoyed it particularly, but it was just like, that was the thing on in the morning that I could put the TV on. It would be loud enough and bright enough to wake me up. So it was just there, and it was just like a drone in the background, just doing its thing.
Brushing your teeth. And the way the bear in the big... That was such a weird show.
You look back, there's loads of stuff like that, though. Like, you ever look back at clips of Barney?
No, see, this is the thing. Like, because there was another show. So Barney's one, and then there's like a cartoon in the US, which is The Brave Little Toaster. And it's like a major thing. And both of them, I've never sat down and watched. I only know of them because they've been referenced so much through everything.
I remember seeing Barney stuff when I was younger. I know, like Brave Little Toaster, doesn't really translate to the UK as well as it did in the US. It's things like the Charlie Brown Christmas specials. Like, we never really had them over here, but like everyone in the US knows what they are. Same with like A Christmas Story.
But then we were introduced to Charlie Brown through Mum, because Mum loves Snoopy.
Yeah, of course. But it's just one of those, like, those Christmas specials. I think there's like 3 or 4 of them, and they just air on TV every year in the States as like a thing, in the same way that the Snowman does here.
Yes.
And, you know, that's just one of those things. And the Snowman or the Santa Claus or whatever it is, Just yeah.
Snowmen are the Santa Claus.
But if you go back and watch Barney, it is so surreal. I think it was probably because being a British kid, watching something that is really American at the time.
Yeah.
It's so like it's weird. It's not weird in its concept because it's a bit weird. It's a purple dinosaur, but that's kids' TV.
I mean, it can't be that weird because we enjoyed Sesame Street. Like, I put them in the same category. Like,
yeah. But that's not what I'm getting at. Go
Right.
back and watch the kids. Basically, go and look at the kids on the Barney show. They seem like children of the corn kids. Like they have almost no life behind their eyes. It's really weird. They all do this kind of like weird reaction thing. So Barney will say something and the kids will react by kind of looking around the room with the widest eyes and their mouth open, looking for other people agreeing with them. It's really odd. It's kind of like he'll say something, I'll be like, it's really strange. Like I don't know what it is. They're just like it's almost like this collective. It's the you should fit in. This is what Barney's telling you to do. You should fit in. Look around the room. Make sure everyone's reacting exactly the same way you are. And if everyone reacts the same way in this nice, bright, happy, eyes open, smiley kind of way, everyone's going to get along. Hands around America. Everything's fine. It's fine. It's fine, Graham. No one's dying. Like
it's like it's like the way you describe it. It's like when you've got a group of people and you're not really understanding the jokes. You look at someone else to watch how they react.
You're just like
yeah. Oh, they're laughing. I'm gonna laugh too. I'm gonna laugh along and kind of get there. It's like a weird.
Yeah, it's like speaking a language and being around a bunch of people who speak a different language to you. You just like wait for the laugh. You're like, yeah.
I got that. You definitely didn't just insult me whilst I in your language. I don't know, but it was freaky. Like it's just But then I was scared of big guys in costumes anyway as a kid. So
yeah, that is true. There's been some hilarious incidents where you cried at theme parks.
Hilarious for you, terrifying for me. Right. Trauma as a child is a thing. All right, fine with them now. I collect puppets, so we're just happy it didn't turn into something else. Yeah, it could have awakened all kinds of things.
Yeah, true.
I found a list of like 90s cartoons that were flawless.
Flawless.
Yeah, they describe them as flawless, but it seems to be a very American list because I feel like there's many more which were missing from it.
It's strong words. Flawless is strong words.
Yeah, so it says it's basically just saying that 90s cartoons were a little better than everything else, which I highly disagree with because there's some great cartoons everywhere.
It's subjective.
Yeah.
And like,
I mean, they listed The Simpsons as number 1.
Yeah. Season 1 to 12.
Well, that's the thing then. It's not flawless, is it? Because they kept going. They ruined their own legacy, sort of thing.
I mean, they did and they didn't. It's just, it just dumbed itself down. Like, I love The Simpsons. Like, anyone that knows me knows that. Like, I really love The Simpsons. I love, like, the kind of bought posting, shit posting kind of, like, world that has come out of Simpsons now. And it just makes me happy because it's such a like a depth of content that you can relate to your childhood. It's just one of those things. But yeah, like it just became really dumbed down, and like it lost its heart, and it lost its kind of sensibilities, really.
I was trying to think what the first episode of The Simpsons I ever saw was. I got into this mindset because we said we might discuss cartoons. I was trying to get into this mindset of like, what were the first cartoons I really remember, which really kind of resonated past just like, oh, this is children's TV and this is, entertaining or anything like that. And I really can't remember what the first episode of Simpsons episode was.
Mine was Homer Jumps the Gorge.
Homer Jumps the Gorge. Okay. Yeah.
So when he jumps over the Springfield Gorge part. Like, I remember seeing that as the first episode I ever saw of The Simpsons.
It might have been the one where they throw water balloons at Nelson.
The kind of army one.
Yeah. but I mainly remember that because of the guy with one arm in the military store. And I feel like that might be the first one I ever saw. But it was just such a removal from everything else we were seeing at the time. Like, I got thinking about this about Friends the other day as well. Like, how that came in. Like,
At the time, yeah, 100%. Like I watched a lot of Friends when I was younger because it was you watched it and it was kind of like it's almost like that. It's the polar opposite to you know how people will talk about SpongeBob having adult jokes in it.
yeah.
I think when you're younger, something like Friends has kids jokes in it.
Yeah.
So you can watch SpongeBob as a kid and get the kids jokes, and then adults can watch it and get some of the more adult jokes. You can watch Friends as a kid and get they're being loud and he fell over and oh I get that joke because it's simple enough for me to get. But then you can rewatch it as an adult, get some of the different ones, some of the more in depth, more kind of like adult jokes to it. And I think he just works on the opposite end of the spectrum. One's designed for kids with adult jokes, one's designed for adults with dumbed down jokes. I don't know if that's intentional. I would assume it's not. I would assume that the Friends dumbed down jokes are just there for thick people, but
Of course. Of course. No, I'd say it's intentional because I think I got into this whole conversation a while back because we were discussing Adventure Time. And they were saying, oh, it's so fresh. It's a lot like the cartoons we had as kids. They've gone darker with it. They've put more adult stuff into it. I'm like, yeah, but also it's kind of expected that this would happen because you think about it, like the cartoons we grew up with really early on, and we see as what would be kind of edgy cartoons. So like your Darias and your Ren and Stimpy's and Cow and Chicken,
MTV cartoons,
MTV cartoons, Cartoon Network cartoons, which were surreal, weird, kind of wacky stuff. I was like, if you think about the people who were that age and then they grew up, they're the people who were making Adventure Time. That's the stuff which they loved. And people, and it was just like, no, this is just, it's all fresh. I'm like, it's not fresh. It's just, they're literally just remanufacturing what they had as a childhood, which is what every generation does. Like,
of course it is. It's like, and unless you're particularly nostalgic as a kid, you don't tend to look too far back than what's in front of you.
Yeah.
Someone like Seth MacFarlane's got a massive love for like big band, like 1920s to 40s kind of big band stuff. So he incorporates a lot of that in his cartoons, and that's something he does as someone who looks back because the guy's not that old. But again, he's really influenced by what's in front of him, and that's.
I still think one of my favorite Family Guy jokes is just when they're on about Seth MacFarlane and Lois is just like, we get it, you were born in the 80s. And it's like, yeah, you watch films in the 80s. Like, and that's every Family Guy episode now. But that's also become memes now because everyone relates to Conway Twitty in some way, which we never knew about.
No one relates to Conway Twitty. That was one of the bits that like killed Family Guy, but you could just tell he couldn't be bothered anymore. So it was like the whole Conway Twitty.
It's Conway Twitty. It's Conway Twitty.
Hilarious. I mean, and like Family, like they still know how to write a joke.
Yeah,
and that's for most part a good thing. Like it's not just cutaways and like there's I can't remember who it was now. Oh god, there's a YouTuber. Search on YouTube for something along the lines of Family Guy cutaways, rise and fall, something like that. And he does a really good video of like shows you the graph of how many cutaways per episode there is, and it kind of this is where its peak was, and then it kind of like goes in there, and like it just showing you kind of like the critical acclaim versus cutaways,
right?
And how like at a certain point they got particularly lazy with cutaways, and I can't remember who it was. It might be Karsten Rundquist. I think
that's a hell of a name.
Unsure.
Of course we've got dog. Of course we've got dog.
Ozzy, come here. The hoovering in the hallway.
Oh, okay.
So. Buddy, it's just a hoover.
Just do it.
You'll be fine.
Don't worry about it. We're fine. I think it's that. Yeah, go for it.
We'll just take a break.
Just take a gap. Just take a break as I slowly discuss and fall into the traps of picking out cartoons. I'm definitely not cutting this. We're leaving this in the middle of it. I don't know. I'm wondering how weird Barney was now. I feel like I need to go back and engage with how white bread Barney may have been.
I
He's
didn't get any of
returned.
that. Sorry, what?
No, I was just mumbling to myself. I was saying I'm not cutting this bit, so I'm keeping him. But I'm like, I need to go back and engage with how weird Barney was. And then I scrolled down on Image Finder, and there's a really hench Barney, and now I'm kind of terrified. I don't know if I want. I don't know if I want to go back and watch Barney. There's a thing. But
I'm just going to search for that.
Search for that. I mean, I'm going to go through some of these other ones, see how agree how flawless they were. Rugrats falls into this. It's number 2 on their list.
Rugrats was pretty good.
Yeah. It ran for longer than I thought it did. Like, because I remember a few episodes of Rugrats, but I don't remember that many. Like, it ran from the 90s to 2006.
Really?
Apparently. Yeah. Ran from 1990 to 2006. It ran for 16 years.
I thought it was one of those like 4-season kid shows or something. But then again, I suppose it did spawn video games and movies as well.
Yeah.
So, no, Nerdstalgic is the YouTube channel. So, in fact, I would heavily recommend Nerdstalgic as a good channel. They have like loads of good stuff. Like, there's a really good video on there about what ruined Homer, and it tracks the way Homer reacts to situations through the different. It's a really good channel. The guy knows what he's doing. And speaking of Seinfeld, there's a really good one on how Seinfeld mastered the art of itself and had the perfect Seinfeld episode, basically.
Right.
It's the masturbation episode.
Yeah. Which it's received a bunch of rewards and stuff. That episode, but it's a really good episode. Yeah. I think Seinfeld, like, I mean, it's weird. Like when you think of like long running shows, so like Simpsons has kind of fallen down. Family Guy, I can take or leave. But Family Guy does something which South Park also does, which is it self-cannibalizes. It's at least self-aware, whereas The Simpsons just seems to have never been self-aware. Like, the only episode there was when they teamed up with the other cartoons.
Yeah, I mean, it has elements of it. Like, it is aware of itself, and it's aware that it's lasted for a long time. There is some meta jokes in there, especially now, like, moving on. It is a little bit more meta, but it doesn't need to be anything else. Because at this point, they're just getting paid to do what they do. It's like working at a company for 30 years, and like you just roll in and you just do it.
It's like it's become like Coronation Street. It's just there. Like
there's what's that? There's which one? It's like the behind the scenes episode of The Simpsons where they parody one of those kind of like expose shows of like.
It's like Behind the Laughter or something.
Behind the Laughter, yeah. And in that, like, they do some meta jokes, and that, like, we've come to the point where we're just like churning out episodes, and like The Simpsons go to Brazil, The Simpsons go to, and it's just like that kind of formulaic. Oh, what are we gonna do next? We're gonna buy a castle. Wacky hijinks, and like, yeah, and it is what it is. Just don't watch it past. The middle of it.
I miss King of the Hill.
Yeah,
I feel like King of the Hill was very underappreciated as a show. It was King of the Hill reminds me a lot more now of the stuff which we see coming out from like the regular show and the new one they just did, where they essentially just went, yeah, we want to make like a sitcom, like a standard adult sitcom, but we're going to animate it.
Yeah. I mean, that's stuff like Rick and Morty, though, isn't it?
Yeah. It was just...
Like, I would say, like, something like Rick and Morty is, like, it has that... It is... Well, we all know it's made for adults anyway, and it's like... we're going to animate it. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Because doing this in real life would be a hassle, so... That's how we get away with doing it.
That's number 9 on that list. King of the Hill. Powerpuff Girls. Doug?
Yeah, like I enjoyed it, but it was one of those Cartoon Network shows which I didn't watch as much.
What, Powerpuff Girls?
Mainly because I'm male, and back then, like, I watched it and it was good, but it was one of those where you just identify with the characters less.
I don't know. See, like, this is the thing with Powerpuff Girls. Like, I think I watched a fair amount of Powerpuff Girls, but I hooked it in with like the whole cycling of what would have been like Johnny Bravo and Cow and Chicken,
Dexter's Lab.
Yeah, Dexter's. It was just literally just all of them fitted together so nicely. It didn't matter what was going on.
Cartoon Network was one of the few cable channels that we actually had, that we got when we were younger. We didn't really have Nick. We only had that for the free weekends, and we didn't have the Disney Channel. We had Cartoon Network, so we dove into Dexter's Lab, Johnny Bravo, Cow and Chicken, Powerpuff Girls, Two Stupid Dogs, that kind of stuff, like Ed, Ed and Eddie. You don't remember Two Stupid Dogs?
Two Stupid Dogs. It rings a bell, but that's not.
Two Stupid Dogs was hilarious. It's probably not hilarious now, but I found it very hilarious when I was
Okay, I remember the visuals to it, but I do not remember any episodes of that.
One of my favorites, like when I was younger, was Space Ghost Coast to Coast.
Oh, Space Ghost Coast to
that
Coast.
show, Space Ghost Coast to Coast is like that show, man. Like that was just ahead of its time. That was one of those things when you were a kid going, "This is hilarious."
Yeah.
Not quite sure why it's hilarious, but this is hilarious. And it kind of prepped you for things like cringe comedy and kind of more meta stuff like Eric Andre and stuff like that, where like, this is funny. This is good.
I think I went through a whole series recently, just kind of like discovering those shows, like because I missed that stuff. I missed Space Ghost as a kid. Like I never saw it as a kid. I saw it as like a teenager. And then the same with like, what's that one? There's one on Netflix at the minute where it's just like they're in like an underwater sea lab. These are just Sea Lab. But so it's like Sea Lab 2020 something. And essentially all it is like there used to be a cartoon called Sea Lab and then they redubbed it. They redubbed. Yeah.
I think I've seen it.
And like rediscovering that. And the same with like the Venture Bros. Like there's a whole range of like those kinds of things where I'm just like, I never experienced any of this. But I'm getting a chance to experience it. And it's nice because like we were saying the other day when we were on about finding music when you're an adult is extremely hard.
Oh yeah.
Whereas massively. Like there's a whole selection of cartoons and films which I never saw from that time period where I can pick them up and be like, oh yeah, this is exactly what I'm looking for.
I think some of it's harder to go back to that doesn't stand up as much as things you watch when you were a kid.
Yeah.
Like I could go back now and watch Biker Mice and Mars because I watched that quite a lot when I was a kid. And it was like I really enjoyed that. And same as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I could probably go back and watch that and be like, yeah. But then if you found me something which I didn't really watch, like I didn't watch that much He-Man.
No, we weren't He-Man kids.
Wasn't really a He-Man kid.
No.
Like if I went back and watched that now, it probably doesn't stand up as well as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in my head.
Yeah.
Something like Street Sharks. Like I remember watching Street Sharks.
But I just literally just Googled Street Sharks.
I don't remember being as in love with Street Sharks as I was other stuff.
Street Sharks was
like
weird,
I definitely preferred Biker Mice and Mars.
Like Street Sharks is one of those ones where you mention it to people who are our age, and it's real hit or miss of who knows what Street Sharks is, or at least who knows that it was a cartoon, because everyone's seen the figures. Everyone knows that there's these toys out there, and they're like, yeah, there's weird shark things from that. It's like, yeah. But did you know that there was a cartoon which accompanied these sharks? These sharks on rollerblades.
Street Sharks.
Just, it really, like, at times, like, as much as we lord over cartoons, really, at times, it was just like we will throw anything at anything in order to make a quick buck and sell some figurines.
Yeah, I mean, what is the one? Is it He-Man?
He-Man was created to sell toys.
Yeah,
literally.
Like, there's a couple of them which I'm pretty sure because there's what's that Netflix show which is The Toys That Made Us.
Yes, Toys That Made Us.
One of those episodes they go into. I'm pretty sure I'm going to look at it now.
I'm pretty sure it's He-Man you're going for here. Like,
I think it is probably He-Man, but I've got it in my head that it's something else.
Because from what I remember, because I watched it and it was one of those ones where they had the figures and then they were like, well, how do we get adverts out for the figures? So they made comic books, and then the comic books turned into TV shows because that was easier to get TV spots for.
Yeah, it was like that. Yeah, He-Man is the one. Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking.
But like Biker Mice from Mars was like that. Like,
yeah, probably was. Yeah,
it was just like, Biker Mice from Mars. I don't think we ever had toys from Biker Mice from Mars though. I don't feel like we did.
Think so. I remember having something related, so like I might have had a lunchbox or something along those lines. You watched any of the Animaniac stuff? Since
The
it's
new
come back?
stuff? No, I haven't. I haven't delved in. How is it?
I haven't either.
Oh, yeah. We have nothing to say on this topic.
No, like I just wondered if you had. Like we enjoyed Animaniacs when we were younger,
Yeah.
so like I didn't know if that was going to be something you've delved into. The only stuff I've seen from it is the kind of tasteless Johnny Depp Amber Heard jokes.
Right.
But it's minor. It slips into one point of the episode, but they make light of his abuse because he's male.
Right.
Very briefly, or at least just they don't actively say it. They just seem to downplay it quite a lot.
Right.
It's a bit meh as a joke, and it's kind of like you could have probably done without that.
Yeah, didn't really need to be in there. Like one of the weird ones I watched fairly recently. I watched the hour-long episode of Rocko's Modern Life. Because
the new one.
Yeah, and I really didn't enjoy it. And I remember watching the cartoon Rocko's Modern Life and really enjoying that and thinking, yeah, this is funny.
That's not one of those ones that I delved into as a kid. Like I was more Ren and Stimpy and Beavis and Butthead and that kind of vibe.
Beavis and Butthead's meant to be coming back. I've heard word that they're bringing Beavis and Butthead back.
Mm-hmm. There's quite a few that I'd like to see. Kind of now we're in an age where we can produce cartoons a lot quicker and cheaper than we ever had. We're not relying on Korean sweatshops to make animation cells for us. We can do it on a computer. I mean, South Park is entirely digital. That's why they can get their episodes out so fast, and that's why they seem so on point. Because if something happens, they can have an episode ready in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And that's come so far now that it's not obvious when something's not as obvious when something's a 2D. You're trying to replicate old looking stuff. Look at Cuphead or anything like that, where just the sheer advance in that. I'd love to see something like an Inspector Gadget reboot, which is like, do you remember Inspector Gadget?
Yeah, I remember Inspector Gadget. That's just such a random one to pick.
But it's just like I loved it when I was a kid, and it was like one of those things where you're just like cool, or something dumb like Captain Caveman.
Captain Caveman coming back would be
like
a revelation.
Like one of those fake Scooby Doos. Like what was the one with the weird blob?
What?
There was like a fake Scooby Doo, which was like a weird blob of some sort.
This is not ringing any bells.
It's like the Mysteries of Shmoo or something like that.
I'm pretty sure you're just making this up at this point. You're just throwing words out there. That's not.
Yeah, let me just have a look.
It's not a thing. I think we were on about it the other week as well. We're saying some cartoons which there's some cartoons which do just need resigning to the annals of history, like Hong Kong Phooey. I loved that as a kid, or Batfink. And you say watch him and be like, yeah, no, these should just lock them away, put them in a little cupboard. But at the same time, I would give a kidney for more episodes of Dexter's Lab.
Yeah,
because I'd go out on a limb and say Dexter's Lab is probably one of my favorite cartoons overall as a kid.
Yeah, I think they could have done some stuff slightly better because it is a bit grating in terms of its presentation sometimes. But
yeah,
especially when I go back now and watch it. But yeah, I love that show when I was a kid because I think it really spoke to the idea that you were more than a kid.
Yeah.
Here was a kid that was more than a kid. And it's like, okay, yeah, cool. And that had that element to it. And a lot of my favorite shows when I was a kid had that. Like when kids had autonomy or went on their own adventures. And it's that kind of thing that really kind of speaks to you, basically.
It's that strange thing. Go on.
I was going to say that show that I was thinking of. It's called The New Shmoo.
The New Shmoo.
It was basically a Scooby-Doo ripoff, where it's like a group of teenagers who solve mysteries and crimes with their friend Shmoo, who's like a friendly ball thing. It can kind of stretch and move.
It does not look like a bubble to me, but
it's like a white. It looks like a moomin. It's a liquid moomin.
It's just a tube with two outward legs at the bottom.
I remember it. Apparently, it's based on an old comic strip of some sort, and this was the kind of
The new schmoo.
the
It was
new
produced
schmoo.
by Hanna-Barbera as well.
Yeah,
That's crazy. Just throw it. They really
it's
did.
like a weird. It's like a seal.
Yeah. It's. I mean, I can see why it didn't particularly last long. It's only got 16 episodes.
Yeah, because no one cared.
But again, that was like that. That's a perfect example of like, you vividly remember that as a thing. That was 16 episodes. It'll run on probably Cartoon Network at some point or something. You'll have seen it, and then it was just gone. Like,
Well, it will have been repeated to death at a certain point, like Captain Caveman. Like,
yeah,
fuck, what people going to remember Captain Caveman?
it was overshadowed by Taz.
But then, yeah, the Taz show and stuff like that. Like, yeah.
But then, like,
You
go on.
I was going to say, like, do you know what did really suck about like 90s? Because a lot of people have fond memories of this, and I remember, like, even back in the day, looking at it and going, "That's a bit weak." Is 90s British kids TV shows, not so much the shows themselves. For your Biker Groves are your Biker Groves,
Right,
you
yeah.
know, Queen's Nose is the Queen's Nose. You like
Burner to watch and all that.
what's the one with the dog?
That really doesn't narrow down. 90s sitcoms, 90s shows were full of magical dogs.
Yeah, there's some sort of magical dog. I can't remember it, and stuff like Brom or whatever. Like they're all there, and they are what they are. You know what I hated when I was a kid is like the studio shows.
What, like Live and Kicking?
Not so much Live and Kicking because that like at least tried a little bit, but like Blue Peter, hated Blue Peter. Like the Really Wild Show, hated the Really Wild Show.
I feel like
most of the time it felt like they were just sat in a fucking broom cupboard with a bunch of tats strapped to the wall.
you have this problem when you watch like you hate Doctor Who.
I hate Doctor Who, yes, correct.
Yeah.
Well,
it's this thing you have.
Hate's a strong word.
No, it's a clear word for you because you have very clear views on Doctor Who.
I don't like Doctor Who as a whole. There are certain elements of Doctor Who which I think are great.
Yeah.
But then Doctor Who in its overall presentation and as a collective thing, I dislike.
It's just a thing of like when you get a show. I mean, like Blue Peter's. I mean, it's kind of like Newsround.
Yeah.
Like all those shows, like they never bothered me. They just weren't that interesting. But they were I feel like they were for a very specific type of child,
Well,
which we clearly weren't.
It had things in it. It had like things, but like it. And I always have a problem. Like I always have a problem. Like I think my biggest problem, like I've said it before, and it's one of my issues with Doctor Who, is things should know what they are.
Yeah.
And they should play to that strength greatly. And it should be, I'm coming to you for a certain thing. Like, I want comedy. I want serious. I want action. I want horror. I want, like, these are the things I want. And some of the elements can combine. Of course they can. But when you don't know what you are, or you're trying to be something that you're not, that's the problem for me. Like, that's why I can't hook into you. You know, take something like the Mighty Boosh. They know they didn't have a budget for most of the things they did. So they DIY'd things the best they could. And it was, okay, we're not going to put CGI for this. We're not going to have an elaborate costume for this thing. We're just going to tape sandpaper to Noel Fielding and paint him a weird color. And that's the character. And you kind of like, okay, you've gone, okay, we don't have the budget for this. So let's just lean into it. Let's make it really obvious that this guy is sandpaper just taped to him, and that's that. And it's the same when you look at practical effects and things like that. If things are done within limitations, they tend to come out pretty well. It's when shows pretend they don't have the limitations but can't quite afford to fulfill what they're trying to fulfill, and that's what makes them look toss. Like, my biggest issue with these kids stuff, like the way it was presented was, well, you clearly don't have the budget to do the big studio show you want to do. You can't do like a Parkinson level production. You can't do like any 90s British quiz show or whatever. I'm blanking.
Yeah, I'm blanking.
Absolutely
That's
blanking on,
not
like-
really not my vibe.
What's the Bruce Forsyth one? That's the one I'm blanking on.
I don't know. All I can think is Generation Game.
Well, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
any of those big productions. You obviously clearly don't have the budget for this because it's just kids' TV, but you're gonna try your best to try and make it look like that and it's just like, now lean into what you are. If you've only got the budget for X, do X. Like Zane Lowe's show on MTV, where they had no budget for Zane Lowe when he was first there, so he just had a couch in front of a green screen. Cool. That's it. He's not pretending to be anything else. He's not pretending to be a studio. And like a couple of shows I used to watch on like late night when I was a teenager, like video game shows like Bits and Bytes and things like that. Like I think it was ITV. I can't remember what the Channel 4 one was. They had fuck all budget, but they had a house with some sofas in it, and they sat and they played video games, and that was that. And like, just be what you are. That's what I'm like.
You fed up with insincere shows.
It's the reason I fucking hate Buffy as well.
What's wrong with Buffy? Buffy knows what it is.
No, it doesn't. Because it puts all this shit CGI in there, and it puts all this kind of like, oh, look, we're better than we are, and look, here's a cinematic camera angle, which is not quite cinematic because we can't afford the actual boom to make it happen. And like, it's like we're not talented enough to work within these restrictions. So what you've got is a half-assed version of what we actually want to make. But if actually we just lent into our budget and lent into what we are, we could have made something a bit better if we'd used practical effects or whatever. Like, it does my head in.
You like X-Files, though?
Yeah, but
X-Files is exactly the same as Buffy. Like, you watch those first 2 seasons, there is some atrocious nonsense in that.
Of course there is, but I'm more invested in the subject matter, so that helps. That helps me ignore those kind of things. And one of the things X-Files does as it goes on is it learns to hide things better, and
it gets better direction as it goes to make those things doable, and it also gets an increased budget as it goes, which is,
I mean, if Buffy was about like aliens and cryptids and different horror elements, I'd probably be more forgiving.
Not vampires.
I couldn't give a shit about vampires.
They're horror elements.
I couldn't give a shit about werewolves. No, fuck that. Give me aliens.
It's just that combination. I mean, like, so like the whole thing with like those kind of shows, like, they've never really bothered me as a kid. They just didn't interest me. They like, because it's weird. In a way, it's weird to recognize that stuff as a kid. As like okay, right. Why do I like the show? Oh, I don't like the show because it's trying to be something it's not. It's presenting itself as news, but it's not news, even though it's like, it's kids with news. But I think a lot of that is just down to our personalities. Yeah, as we were as kids.
By recognizing the things that you do and don't like.
Yeah, because like that's the thing with like us relating to characters like Dexter. Like, as kids, we were very much do our own thing, liked being that outside, but also slightly better than other people, which is what Dexter was really about. And then we didn't like the idea of anything really pretending to or trying to trick us, or kids who felt they were above anyone else, which is like, that's the vibe I always got from like Blue Peter and Newsround. It was always very much like, oh, it's look at these kids, and it's like, oh yeah, and this kid's really smart and he can do this, and oh, look at us, we're news presenters. And I'm like, no, fuck off. Like, that's not what I want from kids. I want broken kids. I want people who have problems like we do.
I just want realism.
Yeah, just give me gritty children's shows, damn it.
Like, for me, things, it's not even gritty, like, just be something. I mean, I don't mind hyper-real stuff as well, but again, hyper-real stuff knows that it's hyper-real. Like, sci-fi knows it's sci-fi most of the time. Ghosts in a horror film know it's a ghost.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't watch some paranormal investigator show because that's clearly bullshit. So, like, that's it.
So you can't draw a line somewhere between.
Yeah, again, it's just like, again, just knowing what you are. Knowing what you are. It's like, go back to like Batman the Animated Series. Yeah. The reason that's so good is because it knew what it was.
It did. It pushed all the right buttons to make background. I think that's in a way, it's a lot of problem with a lot of content we see nowadays. I mean, we've covered content in our start of year podcasts before. But that whole idea of, because there's so much content, it's really easy to recognize insincere content these days. Like, incredibly easy to recognize insincere content because you can
I
see
think so.
well, yeah,
I think it is.
yeah.
You think it is. And I think a lot of people our age would, but you would be, I would say the world is more susceptible to insincere content than it's ever been.
You think?
Yeah, I mean, people don't know. People will sit there and tell you that, oh, blah, 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 this news article headline is true, completely true, because I read it on this website. And you look at the
I'm not
website and it's
talking
like
news style.
theexaminedchronicle.com. And you're like, what? Just because it sounds slightly legit, it doesn't mean it's fucking legit. Like, I think that is a huge problem. And I think people are less, even things like TikTok and reels on Instagram, where like on some of the more long form video content, where stuff like apple cider vinegar, and people suddenly thinking that that's the cure to like everything that exists in the world. It'll get rid of your spots, it'll settle your stomach, it'll get rid of your wrinkles, it'll make your hair better, like whatever.
Yeah.
Like they're seeing it coming from these channels and thinking, oh, these are legit health and beauty channels, and it's not. It's just someone who's selling you the product, like Fit Tea and all that kind of shit.
Do you think that's the? I mean, that's from a very like a factual point of view. But do you think that's true of when it comes to things which are like stories or entertainment? Like that's the thing. Like that's why we connected with cartoons as kids, is because we saw stuff which wasn't being told to us, and we accepted that and went, "This is a more realistic view of life, and that's great. That's what we want to be told as children because we were those kinds of children." Do you think that's true now in the sense of we've got a whole age of misinformation and fake information, like you say, but when it comes to cartoons and stuff, I feel like that is where we've managed to gain back a little bit of people just going, okay, no, I recognize when a cartoon is just a product placement.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
But then we're in the age of brand is marketing now, anyway, or at least we should be. And anyone that's intelligent knows that that's the way to do it. You know, just build a good brand, and the marketing will work itself out. Like you don't have to go on the sales offensive anymore because, well, it works less. It just works less. I mean, I'd love to be well researched on the topic and bring up something like toy channels on YouTube. I'd love to know how much they influence sales. And I'd love to know how much of it is sincere versus paid.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I'd love to know some of the statistics of that.
Same with like unboxing stuff.
That's what I mean. Like, yeah, the kids unboxing stuff. Like, what is it? Mikey's Toy Review.
Yeah.
I think it's the big one. And it's like, I'd love to know the extent of kind of like, yeah, sales spikes and things like that from when these things happen. Because that's not. There's no way that content is sincere.
No.
Not anymore.
It may have started sincere. Was. Yeah.
Well, is it Mikey? I don't want to.
I think so. I think the kid's like 8 or something. Like he's incredibly young. Who's doing it?
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's Mikey, but yeah.
It might be. Yeah.
Yeah, like that kind of content. I imagine it probably was quite sincere at the time, and like, you know, we'll just open some toys, and then like, there's probably a few channels that are very quite sincere with it. But have you ever seen the ones where they become obsessed with giant eggs for a while and go through these little trends, and it's like everything has to come in an egg.
All right.
It's like it comes in this big old egg, and it's like, oh look, there's a massive egg with some toys in it, and then the kid goes and smashes the egg and opens it, and it's like,
right.
That was a thing for a while.
Okay.
They have these kind of like little trends, and I'd love to know how much of it is like paid placement, like when things like fidget spinners and things like that take off, and like, oh look, where's that come from? It's like, well, someone's clearly made that happen.
I love how angry people get about stuff like fidget spinners and stuff like that. Because I'm like, especially people our age, and like, oh, it's just fucking fidget spinners. Why would anyone buy that? I'm like, hang on a minute, guys. Just
let's look at yo-yos.
Let's look at yo-yos. Let's look at Pogs. Let's look at whatever fucking trading card we had. There was them noodle things which we had for a while.
Weird click-clack things that you can push back and forth. Yeah,
like you can't get angry at this. This is someone who has a very specific product and went, you know what? If I can get this just to take off just enough, I can sell it everywhere. I mean, it's terrible for the world and environment, but you can't get angry at that stuff. It's just, yeah.
I wonder how many inflatable chairs are in a landfill right now.
It's such a sad image. The problem is, that's a really sad image. But I would love to go to a landfill and just dig through. Like, I'd love to go for like that episode of Futurama where they go back and he's digging through and he finds all the old crap. Like,
Yeah,
I just want to go back and just like dig up some like, I don't know, some inflatable chairs, maybe some poppers, like some just go through and be like, yeah, this was the 90s.
And by
Yeah.
poppers, I assume you mean Adidas poppers, not.
Yeah, I don't mean like the drug. I feel like maybe digging through a landfill and poppers may be better for you. I think probably a more enjoyable
You'd
experience.
probably feel better.
It'd probably feel a lot better, yeah. But no, yeah, it's that kind of stuff which I'm a sucker for. But at the same time, I'm not one of those people who's like, yeah, buy me that for Christmas, like who are trying to relive that. It's like, no, I just want to see it archived. I want to see that thrown out and go, yeah.
Stuff, isn't it? Like, and I'm a big fan of. One of the things I really like in the world is looking at things that have been made.
Yeah.
And again, it goes back to that realism thing of like, look at, I get nostalgic about toys or video games and stuff because someone made something. Like a Rubik's Cube is a thing that someone put into the world, and that interests me. And it's even goes down to like most of my glassware and stuff in my house is branded in some sort of way because I've got a bunch of retro Pepsi glasses that I like because they look cool and someone made that with a brand on it, and that's a thing. It's not like I don't have a predilection for the brand or anything, but it's something that got made, something that's real, something that existed for a purpose. I like stuff like that. I don't go overboard with it. I'm not like a mad collector of anything in particular, but there's just that the aesthetic of that kind of thing is something I quite like. Most of my Pinterest boards are kind of centered around that.
Something which wasn't lying about what it was at the time.
Yeah, exactly. Just it is what it is. Like
it is what it is.
It is what it is. Like a Rubik's Cube is a Rubik's Cube. Coca-Cola on the side of a wooden crate is Coca-Cola on the side of a wooden crate. That is what it is.
Yeah. I think that's what we need as a nice round-out message for 2021, really. So
this year it is what it is.
It is what it is. Like, we have no idea what to expect. 2021 was not what anyone expected, especially not when we were doing our podcast in 2019. And we were discussing what we wanted from the coming year. I think, yeah, we need content, we need creation, we need people just create. It is what it is, and accept what their limitations are when creating to make something more sincere and it lasts longer, really. From my point.
Yeah. Like I just, for me, it's just be real kind of thing with it. I'll just work within your limitations. It's kind of like there's nothing cringier than watching someone who doesn't have the budget to produce something like cinematic and cool and high end try to work within their limitations to get the thing up here. It's like, if you can't achieve this because you haven't got the budget or you haven't got the skills to do this, then achieve this really, really, really well. Like, don't do a bad version of this. Do a really good version of this. That's it. Like, that's how it's. That's like, obviously, if anyone on your podcast who's still listening at this point, an hour and 9 minutes in, I was rambling about the 90s.
Well, definitely, they will have definitely still got to listen to this one.
Charlotte and Brett will still be here, so it'll be fine. But it's like, obviously, I do digital marketing and make content and for a variety of different people. And one of the things that I always kind of go with people is just like, it's that kind of theory with it. Just be the thing that you are and be the best version of the thing that you are, and don't pretend to be anything else, because people can sniff out people trying to fake it till they make it from most people can. Most people can.
The people who will help you go forward can.
I mean, obviously that flies in the face of me saying people are thick at the moment and believe in random COVID.
I was about to say, this is a very positive message coming from you.
But it depends what people's agenda is. That's the thing. Like, it depends what people's agenda is. And some of the same people who would call you out for inauthenticity on your brand website or your content on your social media are the same people that will quickly tell you 5G is causing COVID because they like to be in the out crowd.
But ignoring that and going with a much more positive outlook, which we when we discussed doing this year's podcast, we were saying we should probably start on something fairly light to lead into the year. But
that's my message with anyone. Like when
Yeah.
you look at social media and like digital marketing and just presenting yourself as a person, like as a personal brand or as a brand that you own or do, is just be the most authentic version of what you are. And that's it. And then do that at scale, and anything that works, hold on to it and repeat it. Anything that doesn't work, it's not as good as you think it is.
That's a good message to end this on.
That's pretty much that. Yeah.
That rounds it out. Well, thank you once again, Martyn, for joining me in what
All
is
good.
December 2020 still at this point. We'll be going live in January. Thank you for anyone who's joining us this year. It's been lovely to speak to my brother once again, as always. And that's
Sure.
Listen to his message, and hopefully you enjoyed the trip through the 90s, which we took.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, you never know. This year, like I have said, like I might actually get around to starting my YouTube channel. I know.
I mean, if it happens, I'm all for it. You know.
Yeah, well, I might get around to it. You never
just
know.
got to actually get around to doing it.
It's just I have to get around to doing it.
You got to be your most authentic self, man. And if your authentic self is not producing things, then
That's it. Like, it will just be me. Like, because I know what I want to do with it. Like, and I know it will just be me. It won't be too dissimilar to yours, but it'll be in a different angle, and it will just be me talking to people. And yeah, like I just need to get around to it. Need to pick a damn name first, one that hasn't been taken, because all the names are taken.
Yeah, that is the hardest part of starting any podcast, as we have found once again. But on that,
do you know what I wish for 2021, other than that weird website which is going to tell me where things are streaming, when someone like that would be that, like, at some point, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, whatever, just go delete all the inactive pages and like free up usernames. Honestly, just free up all the fucking usernames. Like, the amount of things I've thought of a good name for. You go on Instagram and you search it, and there's one person using that moniker, and they've never made a post in their life, and they've got 2 followers, and it's like it's a dead, inactive account. It's like,
just wipe them all. That's what we need. That's what we need. We need a wipe clean and some authenticity. And on that note,
otherwise you end up having to wait for a new site to come along to get the username that you want, or add a bunch of shit to the end. I'll be really meta with it. But yeah, like, that would be a good thing for 2021. Someone turned around and went, anyone that hasn't uploaded to Instagram in 2 years, account's gone.
That's good.
Or
it's
you
right
get
there. I agree.
You get assigned a random set of numbers as your username.
Yeah, you lose your username unless you reclaim it.
Yeah, unless you reclaim it. Yeah. Or, like, in fact, you know what we should be able to do? If I say to Instagram, I want that username, and that person has 6 months to say yes or no to Instagram. 6 months is a long ass period of time for them to not check their account. If you haven't checked your Instagram account in 6 months, that's on you.
Someone in a coma is going to get screwed out of their sweet username.
I mean, obviously, this is a guy in a coma. I'm going to give it back, but like,
yeah. But
right.
We'll wind that up.
Yeah, we'll end there.
Yeah,
Sounds fun. Right.
Thank you for talking
Enjoy,
to me.
and I'll catch you soon.
We'll talk to these guys later. Bye.